on inputs, hang-ups. I learned this from Mike Vance. It's so simple. Everybody here has some kind of organization system, day timer, Franklin planner, something in your palm. Jay has everything in his cell phone, the history of the universe. Everybody has that, but don't most of you keep your personal and your business and all of that together? And I think it's invasive to go into somebody's personal organizational thing. It's no one's business, maybe except for an administrative assistant. I mean, don't most of you keep, you know, it's no one else's business that at 2 o'clock you have, you know, a doctor's appointment for something. That's private information. And so this is public information on organization. It can be used for a person, it can be used for a department, it can be used for a project, it can be used for a company, it can be used lots of different ways. Let me show you the process and you just see if it's applicable and you can use it according to yours. We showed this to Neil, Herb Kurzman, and Carly Hibbert-Jones, who, Jason, they're the grant developers from Sinclair. On their website, they refer people to us. That's how gracious they are. They've probably recommended between 200 and 300 grant developers who have been through our training to use it in their work. Is that somebody who shares? And they also figure this process, and they've said it gives them a 1/3 edge and a 45-to-1 return on investment for every dollar in their department and their function the college sees as a return. Wouldn't you like to have a 45-to-1 on everything you do? Ain't bad. Ain't bad. And this is their adaptation. So you can see there where it has the do, doing, done, inputs, hangups. And in the card, the actual card itself, what you do is you make a mark on it like this, and above the X goes today's date. I forgot what year it is, much less what date it is. I think it's spring, isn't it? Spring 21st century, but you put the date. Underneath that is where the completion date goes, and on the far right is the deadline. So you have start time, deadline, completion time. Then you put the task, whatever it is that you are there to work on. And then underneath, in the bottom right-hand corner, you can put a dollar charge if there is. So instead of ending up tasks who will do it in deadline, we could have ended up with this if the projects were going to stay in place. Let's say this was back in our office, Jason, and you wanted to keep the storyboard up and working with the rest of your team, you could convert to this as an alternative. Down in the bottom left, you can put the person's name, initials, small team like you have. You could be red dot, another person could be a blue dot, another person a green dot. So you have instant information. What they did with Sinclair is they have 4 different functions that they perform, and they do the card once. And the green ones are a part of development of a grant. So what they'll do is fill it out, and there's 2 people. So if Carla fills it out, she'll put it under input so Neil sees it. And then he'll bring it out and put it up into do. And then when they're working on it, they put it over into doing. And then when it's all completed, into done. Now, they took many of their functions and made routine cards. And if you look at the things that Diane is passing around, they do 4 basic functions that are reflected over my shoulder in 4 different, by the 4 colors. And you see the detail as it comes around. And you can download these, Jason, from our website. So you can see without getting into the detail on it, what they did. So when you have repeatable functions, you can get it up there, and they're handling several grants simultaneously. And when they complete something, they just exit off. And they don't have to have endless staff meetings because it's right there. Don't you? How many of you have these staff meetings that are like show and tell? You know, you hear the same thing week after week. There was a company that was putting in a big system down in the southeast, a huge bank, and everybody on the project team had one of these where they would track their tasks. They'd come together in a big room. They had ledges all around and windowsills, and they put all the briefing boards around, and then people would go brief themselves for the first part of the session, and then they'd spend their time in planning and resolving hang-ups. So here are the categories. Input is from somebody else. Do is to be done. Hang-ups are where you need help from other people. For those of you who are around this part of the country, there's a college called Geneva. Many years ago, the Armstrong Cork Company that do these kind of tiles for the ceilings, or now Armstrong Industries, donated this mega factory to the college. And they didn't leave any money with it to do anything, so they had this mega factory next to the college. And a dear friend of ours, Chuck Rosemeyer, was working in kind of your job, Jason, in business, you know, getting money for the school. I mean, that's what it was. And one of his projects was to figure out how to get money for that, for the clearance of that factory. And they had some fellow who was taking it down brick by brick, and he'd been doing this for years. And you know, he got his truck and his little plow and all of that. And the rate he was doing it would have taken thousands of years. And it had this huge tower on it, hundreds of feet high. I mean, you know, for a smoke furnace for a factory like this. And the topic of the storyboard compression planning session was how to drop the tower. How's that for a focus topic? So they went through a whole thing, and somebody came up with the topic, and it said, get the folks who drop buildings. You know, the ones that did Three River Stadium in Pittsburgh and did, you know, the MGM Grand and all this. And their name is Loazo. And they said, try and get Loazos to do it. It's basically the card on the briefing board. And he put it in hang up because he didn't know how to do it. And somebody came walking along and saw it and said, do you mean the people that dropped the buildings? I said, yes. He said, I was in a youth group with Rick Loazo. One phone call, and they dropped the tower for free. And you've been there, and you've seen Merriman Field. Chuck was courageous enough to say, I don't have the answer. It's not the storyboard, it was the leaders. And he asked for help, and it happened. And we can tell you stories like that all over the place of leaders who were courageous enough to say they didn't have every answer. So, doing, done. Just move the cards. It's up there. It's a way of recording. You can use it on corporate things. You can use it like what you talked about tonight. There's all kinds of variations and adaptations of it. I've seen this used on billion-dollar projects, and I've seen it used on planning our wedding. A fellow I know that owned a bunch of apartment buildings, he was, what did they call, nocturnal? Is that it? They all night but sleep during the day. This guy was nocturnal, and he'd go around through all of his apartment buildings, and if he had any, he had this for all the managers, and he was just he had a fetish about examining his property, and he'd go through and leave tasks like this for the building managers, probably drove them absolutely crazy. And but he'd give them a task and a deadline, and then he'd go back and check on it, and he could do all that, and it worked for his style, and he never saw his building managers because they were sleeping, and he's out crawling the hallways at 4 in the morning. People have adapted to